Do you know that one of the most popular video game franchises of all time, Pokemon, has had gambling baked into it for decades? I definitely did, because as someone who later became addicted to gambling, Pokemon was actually my first experience with it. I spent hours as a kid glued to those flashing slot machines in the game corners, and I never realized it was teaching me the same patterns and habits that I would eventually struggle with years later. Today, I want to break down how gambling has existed in most generations of Pokemon, how it normalized risky behaviors, and why it's so important we start talking about gambling addiction before someone starts struggling with a problem. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rob, and I'm in recovery from a gambling addiction, as I mentioned. I made my last bet on November the 12th of 2022, and I've also recently begun my journey into competitive Pokemon, which is of course a super attractive and not at all nerdy quality of myself. When I look back now, I can connect the dots that I didn't see before. My first exposure to gambling wasn't a casino, it wasn't sports betting, it was literally Pokemon. This game is literally a game of randomness, and if we're honest, it's just wild how similar it is to real life gambling. There's also literally gambling in it, as we're gonna talk about. I mean, I remember being a kid, I was sitting there in Celadon City in the game corner on Pokemon Fire Red on my Game Boy, and I was mashing the A button over and over again, trying to line up the slots, chasing those free spins, feeling that rush when I finally hit. Yeah, I was a slot addict in a fictional city, the same way that I was in Atlantic City. I had no idea at the time that all those same feelings, the dopamine spikes, the obsession, the just one more try mindset, would eventually become the foundation of my own addiction. But before we dive into it, I have just one favor to ask from you. I've been creating videos about my gambling addiction story for a long time now, and the goal has always been to reach as many people as possible. The thing that you could do that would help me to accomplish this goal would be to hit that subscribe button. If at any point in this conversation you hear something that you were like, wow, I didn't know that before, just subscribe, because it helps me to make more content like this and help people not go down the same path with their life that I went down with mine. So now let's get into it. It was a bit before the games that I played personally, but the Game Corner was introduced in Pokemon Red and Blue. You'd earn or buy coins and then spend them at slot machines for a chance to win a rare Pokemon like Porygon or Dratini. There was no skill involved. It was pure chance, despite what some of us might have wanted to believe. Given that Red and Blue were released in America in 1998, there's a pretty decent chance that they were the first time many kids were introduced to random rewards and risk-reward mechanics through a video game. I mean, maybe they were getting some dopamine from a claw machine or something like that at an arcade, but this was something that was now in their pockets and, of course, available 24/7. The worst part was there was literally no attempt at all to make it a kid version of the casino. I mean, we're talking sevens on the slot machines with, yeah, some faces of Pokemon, but they do that in the casinos too. But the goal was quite literally the same as it was in Vegas. Next came the Generation 3 games like Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and then I'll lump in Fire Red and Leaf Green in here too. The game corners were still there, flashing lights, big payouts, those instant dopamine hits, but in Emerald, Game Freak actually took things a step further, and they added literal roulette tables alongside the slots. Yeah, just in case the slots weren't scratching that itch for you after a long day of learning your times tables, yeah, have a nice relaxing time at the roulette wheel, kid. You needed coins and wins to unlock certain moves like Double Team, Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, moves that seriously buffed your team. I guess Game Freak wants you to know that if you want to win in your career, you need to have first risked your money on something like the slots. Now, the lottery feature also first appeared during Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. The game designers literally must have just been addicted to gambling at that point. At the Lily Cove department store, there was a lottery corner where players could win rare prizes by matching the digits of their Pokemon's trainer ID numbers. Each day, the game would randomly draw a 5-digit number, and if any of your Pokemon's IDs matched, you could win items ranging from PP ups to the highly coveted Master Ball. This mechanic encouraged trading Pokemon with other players because the more unique trainer IDs you had in your party, the better your odds were of winning. It became one of the earliest RNG-driven reward systems in the entire franchise. Similarly, Mirage Island was also introduced in Ruby and Sapphire, and this was a mysterious location east of Pacific Town. It could only appear if one of the Pokemon in your party had a specific personality value that matched the game's daily random number. The odds were incredibly low. Just 1 in 65,536 each day, which made Mirage Island one of the rarest events in Pokemon history. Players lucky enough to reach it could find lychee berries and encounter Wynot, a special reward for their patience and luck. Now, by Generation 4, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, things changed. International regulators stepped in and they started banning gambling content in E-rated games. So the game corners were removed from many versions, outside of Japan. In Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Voltorb Flip was introduced as the first major replacement for the traditional gambling venues in Pokemon games, specifically substituting the slot machines found in the earlier titles out for a more skill-based game in Voltorb Flip. So unlike the previous games where players could wager coins directly on the slot machines, Voltorb Flip was designed as a skill-based puzzle game made to comply with those stricter international regulations. The game combined elements of Minesweeper and logic puzzles, kind of requiring players to guess safe tiles while avoiding the hidden Voltorbs that could end the round instantly. But of course, groups like Stake.com have taken that to a whole new level today. Now, by shifting from pure chance to a strategic problem-solving game, Game Freak created a system that maintained that feeling of risk-reward without actually showing betting or simulating gambling. This is a precedent that would carry in future Pokemon titles to move away from the in-game gambling mechanics entirely. One funny thing to point out here is that in remakes of the old games that came out more recently, we either see a literal acknowledgement that the game corner has been forced to shut down, like in Omega Ruby and Sapphire where the game corner has a sign on it that says it's permanently closed, or we see the gambling venues replaced with things like restaurants or department stores, in a move to kind of say that they were never there from the start, guys. Don't pay any attention to what used to be here. The last reference we see to gambling in the series actually comes in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, where the Celadon Game Corner makes a visual return, but it serves as a symbolic farewell to the franchise's gambling roots. While the slot machines are still present, they are just decorative, not having kids spin them anymore. They're non-functional. But instead, NPCs reminisce about the old days of gambling, subtly acknowledging the series' history with casinos, while signaling a definitive shift away from gambling mechanics. Yeah, these NPCs really miss the thrill. The thing is, gambling still never really left Pokemon though. It just evolved, became a little less obvious. Loot-style mechanics like the Battle Frontier introduced randomized rewards. Shiny hunting is still around, though it's morphed a bit, leading people to rip through thousands of encounters for stuff like a 1 in 8,000 chance of getting a Pokemon that is, just a different color than all of its friends. And of course, the RNG of the game itself. The fact that moves can hit for damage within a specific range, moves can miss, status conditions have kind of a variable schedule for how long they can last. Yeah, that unpredictability is what keeps the gambling mechanics around, regardless of how much strategy or knowledge a player has about the right plays to make. And of course, outside the video games, we can't overlook the trading card game boom of today, where we see thousands of people heading down the path to a gambling addiction as they rip through packs looking for valuable cards that they can resell. This is basically mimicking a slot machine type behavior. You open a pack, chasing a jackpot, and you keep buying more. So even without the slot machines and game corners, the reinforcement cycles stayed about the same. But here's why this matters. Pokemon introduced variable ratio reinforcement schedules, the same psychological system slot machines use to keep gamblers hooked. Sometimes you would get that big win, and then sometimes you'd lose 10 times in a row. But that random maybe next time reward loop, yeah, that keeps you pressing A. And for kids like me, not that I'm a kid anymore, that laid the groundwork. I didn't know it then, but Pokemon was teaching me that chasing losses, risking resources for rare rewards, and equating excitement with unpredictability was to become my future. Now, this isn't me blaming Pokemon. I mean, I love these games. I'm literally going to play after this, but we can't ignore how early exposure to gambling mechanics impacts developing brains. And sure, I mean, it's not the highest stakes in the world, right? You're losing Poké Dollars and you can just go beat up a bunch of kids' pets and get more money whenever you want. But we're simply talking about how it's changing the psychology of risk and reward for very impressionable people whose brains haven't formed yet. Now, here's why I'm making this video. Right now, gambling is more accessible than ever before. sports betting apps, online casinos, even loot boxes in video games that are literally linked to full-fledged online casinos. If we're not talking about gambling and gambling addiction early on, we're setting up a generation of young people to struggle just like I did. As every day for the 6 years that I was in active addiction, I was ripping sports bets, spinning slots, and blasting off on table games while neglecting everything else around me just to keep feeding that beast and getting that rush. Pokemon isn't the problem here, but it is a perfect example of how normalized gambling behavior has been in gaming and life for decades. It also shows why we need to educate kids and teens about what those mechanics really are and how they're impacting their thought processes. If you're a parent, talk to your kids. If you're a teacher, bring this up in class. And if you're someone who's already struggling, I want you to know this: you are not alone. I didn't think I'd ever escape a gambling addiction, but I did. You can too. I want you to check this video out next if you feel like you're the only person on earth with a gambling problem, because I'm confident you'll find that just isn't true. Let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.